Hello, and welcome to Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Julia Campbell, and I'm going to sit down with nonprofit industry experts, fundraisers, marketers, and everyone in between to get real and discuss what it takes to build that movement that you've been dreaming of. I created the Nonprofit Nation podcast to share practical wisdom and strategies to help you confidently find your voice, definitively grow your audience, and effectively build your movement. If you're a nonprofit newbie or an experienced professional who's looking to get more visibility, reach more people, and create even more impact, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so happy to have you here with me today for another edition of the Nonprofit Nation podcast. I'm your host, Julia Campbell. And today I have a special guest. Her name is Madison Gonzalez. She is a national public speaker. She's won the Storyteller of the Year award. She's a best-selling author of Dear Mirror. She's an events manager and published poet. She's also the executive director at Morning Light Incorporated, an Indianapolis-based nonprofit that fosters community programs in Indiana for the terminally ill, seniors, families, and the homebound. As a storytelling coach and consultant, it is her mission to empower others to share their stories for impact and income. So welcome to the program, Madison.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yay, thank you. Well, storytelling is such a huge topic. Before we dive in, let's begin with your story and a little bit about how you got involved with the work you're doing right now.
Sure. So my story is I went to school for event planning. I've always loved events and just having a good time. And so I thought, okay, I'll go get a hospitality degree. And I did about one wedding and decided, okay, no, never again. I'm planning another wedding.
I was probably the bride at that wedding.
Yeah, right.
I was horrible bride.
And, I really actually stayed home with my kids for a couple years. And I decided it was time to go back to the workplace. I wanted to get back involved in working. And I just kind of happened upon this part-time job with the nonprofit that I work with now, which is Morning Light. I really started just a couple days a week. And I thought, I want to use my event degree for something good. I want to help raise money. I want to help, raise awareness for a good cause. And I just I had made that decision and I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then this job opened up and I saw it and it was just perfect because I just wanted to kind of ease back into the workforce after staying home with my kids. And then about 4 years later now, I'm actually the executive director. So I started as a part-timer.
Funny how that happens in the nonprofit world.
Right. Yeah. You get started and, you fall in love with the mission. And, I work for Morning Light, which is a nonprofit. We operate a home, a 12-bedroom home for hospice patients who are homeless or have nowhere else to go and no one else to care for them. And when I started at Morning Light, I didn't know anything about hospice at all. I just knew that it was a nonprofit job. I wanted to, like I said, plan events and do all of that. But what I didn't realize is how much I would really fall in love with the mission. And really, I fell in love with the mission because I got to hear all of these incredible stories of people at the end of their life. That's a really reflective time for people. It's a really powerful time for people. And a lot of these people didn't know, they didn't have anybody to really leave their legacy to because, like I said, our clientele, a lot of the time, they don't have family. They don't have anyone to help care for them. So that's what brings them to our home. And so, it just became really evident that this is something powerful. We have the ability to kind of capture the lives of these people and, give them validation. And that's where I fell in love with the storytelling aspect of nonprofits. I thought, nonprofits meet people in really powerful places of their life, right? Yes. A lot of the time. And so we have this amazing ability to help people feel seen and feel heard in a time where they might feel a bit vulnerable at times. And so I just thought that, this is a really powerful thing. And I really kind of just studied it. I kind of devoted a lot of my time to it. I learned on the job. And so much of, as you know, nonprofits is marketing and communications. And I think that's really what helped me kind of rise, I suppose, to executive director, was just seeing that, if you can package these stories and help people understand your mission, it's a really powerful, place to be. So that's what I do.
I mean, that's really amazing. I work with a lot of organizations that are in human services. I actually have worked with organizations that take women and children and men out of sexual exploitation, out of sex trafficking.
Wow,
I've worked at a rape crisis center. I've worked in domestic violence for years. So I cut my teeth in storytelling in really, really tough issues. And I think the misconception that nonprofits have is that there's no way to authentically and ethically tell stories unless it's something that's super positive, that has a very positive ending that you can kind of tie it all in a bow. So for my particular audience, they're mostly marketers and fundraisers at nonprofits. A lot of them are newbies, or a lot of them maybe had this storytelling role kind of thrust upon them and they don't even really know where to start. Sure. So what tips do you have for a nonprofit, a person, maybe an executive director, maybe with a very small staff, trying to collect the stories around difficult issues?
Sure. I think that, a lot of people, society tells us that you don't ask questions, right? Mm-hmm. Like if it's personal,
it's
don't
impolite.
Ask questions. Don't be nosy. To that, I say, you might be the only person to ever really take interest in this person's story.
That's such a good point.
Give them the chance. All you have to really do is have conversations with people. I think even executive directors who, I know we wear a million hats in nonprofit world, and it's like, oh, I don't have time to go over there and talk to people. I'm managing a board and I'm raising money and I'm doing all this stuff. But I think it's so important to, really ground yourself in the mission and not let yourself get too far away from the mission and too far away from the people that you're serving. I think it boosts morale, for us as fundraisers to constantly integrate ourselves with these people that we're serving, but really going over there and just having conversations with people is huge for collecting stories. I started collecting stories. My roommate in college cuts hair. She's a hairdresser.
Oh, that's like therapy. They have the best stories.
Exactly. And I thought, we need to get her over to the home and cut hair for our residents. And that's when we just sat there and had conversations with people. She was just cutting their hair. And I just said, would you tell me about your life? Would you tell me about your background? How does it feel to be here, and what brought you here? I think, what brought you here is a good question, just in terms of, it's a broad question that, people can answer in a multitude of ways. But it just kind of opens up to, where are you from and what are you interested in? And, I think that we feel like when we're telling their stories, we have to also be telling all the negative things, right? Like we have to have that shock factor. And it's good to have the struggle in there. But I think what we really need to be doing is humanizing people and connecting people to each other. So what are you interested in? What do you like to do? Who are you, as a whole person, not just this one thing that happened to you or this, bad period of your life. As a whole person, what are you about? And what are your hopes? What are your goals? And just talking to people, showing them an interest and giving them the chance to be heard. Now, of course, you want to give people the option, right? Like they don't have to tell you anything, but just having conversations and just taking a genuine interest, you might be surprised how many people just want the chance to tell their story. Also knowing that their story makes a difference and that their struggle meant something because they can talk about it and make a difference. You're empowering people. You're giving them a chance to use their struggle to raise awareness, to raise, funds for a mission that they might care about themselves now because they're a part of it. And then suddenly their struggle has a little more meaning than just this bad thing that happened to me that I'm not allowed to talk about. Nobody wants to hear about, right? Because there's a lot of shame when there's a struggle as well. And so, really, it's just, it comes back to the mission, right? It comes back to why we do what we do. It's because we want to empower people and give those people the chance to feel human again, not just because something bad happened to them or because, in my case, they have 6 months or less to live, and that's scary.
Yes.
But, validating their life and validating their experience is something that nonprofits are gifted and able to do. And again, you're giving them an option. You're not exploiting people. The other thing that you want to do when it comes to the issue of kind of exploitation is remember that we are the messenger. We're just the vessel in which their story is told. We don't manufacture things. We don't try to, add all this, salt and pepper to the story to make it serve our mission better. You need to tell the story as it was told to you, so that you're just basically sharing their story, not creating their story, because that's where we can get a little dicey for exploitation. Listen to this poor human being and this terrible thing that happened to them and all of this stuff. That might not be how they told it to you. They might have just kind of mentioned something and then you took it and ran with it. But also, be sure to ask them, of course, if you can share their story, but then share that story with them before you share it with the world. Is this how you want your story told? Is this okay?
Absolutely. There's so much to unpack there. I love the notion and how you put it of we are the vessel and we are sharing the story, not creating the story. So I teach a 5-week course about nonprofit storytelling, and I just ended. And I really wish that I had that nugget of information because that is the mindset shift that needs to happen. That is absolutely the change that I think a lot of nonprofit communicators can really get behind, because they feel like, okay, we need to be these perfect content creators. We need to be videographers. We need to be bloggers. We need to be podcasters. We need to be writing these great emails and these perfect social media posts. And oftentimes, a lot of my clients and a lot of my students, they do feel like they're creating the story and they don't feel comfortable.
Right.
And what I say is you need that inner, you need that inner monologue where that intuition, where when you've gone a little bit too far or when you've massaged it. I just had a student ask a question. She said, we work with a lot of people, English is their second language, and a lot of the things they say are not necessarily grammatically correct. Should we change the story? And I said, absolutely not. You can, there are ways to do it where you can still make the story make sense. So do you have any more sort of tips around mindset, around how we can get over this barrier where we think we have to be these perfect communicators and just really becoming that vessel?
Yeah, there is a lot of pressure, right, to be cutting edge and creative. And, I think that the more you have those genuine conversations with people, write them down, record them, record quotes, ask for things in their own words. I think, testimonials are huge. I try to, use videography. You don't need to be fancy. All you need is a phone that records. And, that's what we did with the haircuts. Really, we just recorded the sessions. And then
tell me more about this.
Sure.
I love this idea.
Right. The haircuts. When my hairdresser best friend came in, we, had them come in and get their haircut. I just had my, iPhone open and I said, do you mind sharing your story with us? And they said, not at all. And so while she's cutting their hair, I'm just recording their testimonial and their story.
Wow.
And then all you have to do is, cut it up, have a couple quotes in there, and then share that. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. In fact, a lot of the time, people can tell when something doesn't feel authentic, and it feels manufactured, and they feel, the audience feels like they're being kind of like exploited because it's like boom, 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 all these flashing lights and all this crazy stuff. And it's like, well, all we really need is just that genuine human connection. Because, for Morning Light, for example, I might think I don't have anything in common with someone who is homeless and terminally ill. I might think that their life is totally different to mine. I can't relate. But when you sit down and you start talking to them, you find that there's a lot you might have in common. And it might be simple things like, favorite foods and favorite music, or, I
A
like
TV show you're both watching.
yeah, these common, what I call common denominators, where it grounds us in the human experience, where, oh, you like ice cream? I like ice cream. Oh, you liked Friends? I liked watching Friends. They're not, the people aren't so different after all. We're all human. And I think, that's our job as the communicator, is to create those bonds, because when you can create those bonds between the audience and then the people that you're serving, you're bridging a gap that they didn't realize they might have had in their minds, these kind of barriers or stigmas.
Prejudgments.
Yeah, stigmas that they might have about people. I think that, sharing stories, just in simple stories in terms of what was your best birthday or something like that, you don't have to be constantly sharing these hard-hitting, gut-wrenching stories. I think that's something nonprofits get wrong as well. It's just about creating human connection and bonds between those that we're serving and then those that are helping to fund our missions.
And now a word from our sponsor. I'm here to tell you that this podcast episode is sponsored by my newest free training, Social Media in 20 Minutes Per Day. This is where I give you my exact framework and process to schedule and organize your time so that social media does not take over your entire day and to-do list. Watch the replay for free at socialmediain20, that's 20, the number's 20.com. And be sure to tag me on social to let me know what you think. That's socialmediain20.com. Thanks for listening and enjoy. Nonprofits always think, or, people that have studied marketing, or, I studied journalism, we always think that we have to go for the gut first. We have to get that story that's going to be the angle and the hook and is going to get people to pay attention. But that's not really the way you build trust.
Right.
And what I loved about what you said before is that a lot of the people that we serve in nonprofit work, they don't want to be identified by this one event.
Right.
Like they are in a homeless shelter. That is not the defining moment of their life. That is not what they want to be defined by. Yes, it might have changed their life. It might have transformed them. It might be a clarifying experience for them. But I know when I worked in domestic violence, that was very difficult for a lot of we worked mostly predominantly with women. We were a women's shelter, people identified as women. And what they would say is, well, I want to tell my story to help others, but I don't want this to be the only thing I'm known for.
Exactly.
I don't want this to be the only thing that people care about. So I love that idea of asking leading questions, starting the conversation. Now, here's a question for you. So you work with the terminally ill, you work with seniors, you work with people that are homebound, you work with families. How do you get up that courage? And that's something that when I was training volunteers was really challenging.
Sure.
So people that are not necessarily used to going out and having these kinds of conversations, starting these conversations, what is your recommendation? Where do you start?
I would say try to do it in a situation that feels less formal.
Yes.
So it doesn't.
Don't call them up and say, I need a story for our email newsletter on Friday. Can I come and interview you
for my next email? It doesn't have to be that formal. That's kind of where I go back to do what you can to just spend a little time, a couple times a month over, somewhere where the mission is taking place. So, if it's a school or if it's a shelter or if, just try to spend some time, boots on the ground in a way and see how you can, sit down and just color with that kid or, play bingo with that senior or something that feels less formal. And then also to feel like you're comfortable, go in with, maybe 5 questions that you have in mind that, so you're not trying to like scramble when you're in the moment and you're feeling uncomfortable. I think, I think the more that you can try to build a relationship ahead of time, the better off you are. And if you don't feel comfortable building those relationships, who's doing the work in your mission? Can you kind of partner with them to help you build that relationship? Or can they be collecting stories on your behalf and then you can package them and submit them, but somebody's working with these people that we serve, right? So could you, even if it feels like I don't have time to do that, could you maybe work with the people who are there pretty consistently and see if they'd be willing to kind of set up something for you to go in and do some questions?
What I love about the conversation idea, like just the idea of having conversations, is that it's really bringing a lot of us out of our comfort zone, or especially, I don't want to stereotype Northeasterners, but we are. I know every time, like I was just in Florida, I lived in Virginia for a while. Anytime I go to a Southern state, I am shocked at how much there's just so much small talk and questions about your family. And I'm like, no, I want my coffee, or like, I want my whatever. Like we don't do that up here. But it's interesting how, when I did move to Virginia, this is something that I ran into. I was very much that development director that would call up the program officer and say, hey, we're doing an annual appeal. I need some stories. Come get me some.
Yeah.
And without building that trust, without having that conversation, without really being the boots on the ground.
Sure.
And I really think that's where organizations struggle, because we're so focused on return on investment, and this has to be immediate. And
sure,
how can we draw that line? So another question I have for you, because you seem to have done a fantastic job at Morning Light, is how do you create a storytelling culture within your organization? So getting buy-in from all of these program officers or staff members, or even if you're not an executive director yourself, you're a development director, how do you create that culture where there is that buy-in for storytelling?
I think really it's just making sure that everybody's on the same page and comfortable having those conversations. So basically having conversations with your staff, just like you're having conversations with the people that you're serving.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to apply the same principles where they have stories too, starting to get them to think about just how do we create like authentic connection between our staff as well as those that we're serving. And then everyone's just feeling more comfortable, hopefully having conversations and creating that environment that, then they're more comfortable going out and having conversations with those that we're serving, because we're having conversations within our own team, if that makes sense. And then, we need stories and, we need stories to support this organization. So how do we get those stories? What do we need to be doing? And asking them for their opinions too. I think I'm very big on feedback. I don't have all the answers. So how do you think we should be getting stories? What kinds of stories do you think we should be telling? I think helps.
I completely agree with you. If you can get people's buy-in and if you can get their viewpoint, their feedback, their opinions, help you craft the plan rather than just tell them what you think that they need to be collecting.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. So where does Morning Light tell stories? What are your favorite channels?
Yeah, so we tell stories on our socials, and then we have great success with our email campaigns. So we actually run storytelling campaigns via email. So
tell me more.
This is my favorite tactic is a 3-part series. So marketing tells us that, our audience needs to see something between 3 and 5 times before they really consider making. And coincidentally, perhaps or not, story structure is actually a 3-act story structure. So what we do is we pick one of our favorite stories and then we do a 3-part series. So we have, act 1 being the setup where we introduce the person and maybe a little bit about them. Act 2 is that kind of climbing struggle, if you will, or that rising action. And then Act 3 is the resolution. So how we were able to kind of, serve them and help them. And we have really good success in terms of our open rates. They're consistent. And so, you kind of have a little teaser at the end of each email, like, okay, we'll tell you the next part of the story tomorrow. And I think that helps because it helps with that repetition and staying top of mind. So we do that twice a year, that kind of campaign.
Okay. So you do 2 of those 3-part series.
Yeah. One in
Is that a fundraising campaign?
Yeah. So that's a fundraising campaign. And then we definitely tell stories at our events. I think that's something, that nonprofits absolutely need to be doing at their events. So whether it's in person or not, having a video to show with testimonials, having someone, if they're comfortable coming and, speaking from their heart in their own words, that kind of thing. Having stories on the tables, have a picture of someone who you've served and have their story on the back on the table, keeping our mission really top of mind during our fundraising campaign or fundraising events as well. It's not just about, come dress up and have a good time. I think it's really important to kind of everywhere you're turning to be telling those stories at an event like that. And that's really helped us increase our revenue for that.
Wow. Do you tell the 3-part story on social media?
Yep. So when we do the 3-part stories, we send out the email. So it's once a day for 3 days in a row is how we do it. And then we post.
I love that. So you don't lose momentum.
Yeah. You don't wait too long, and then getting an email, 3 days in a row. I mean, you know how it is when you open an email and you're like, oh, I'll get to that later. You might be in the middle of something, but you might catch them at the right time the next day. You might catch them at the right time the day after that. Yep. It just increases your odds of success. We do send out a mailer once a year, a direct mail campaign, and we tell stories on that. So really every time that we're sending out communications, unless, we're really promoting something like our special event, we try to include a story.
That is fantastic. I love the idea. And I know a lot of nonprofits got really upset, or not upset, but scared, thinking about sending an email every day for 3 days.
Sure.
Thinking that, everyone's going to unsubscribe and our audience is going to hate us. But if it's worth their while, I think this is really key. If it's worth their while, if it's piquing their interest, if it's relevant to them, and you do it twice a year, so you're not inundating them with emails all of the time. I really love that idea, because you're right. If I miss that first email, I see the second one that might say part 2. Right. And I think, I'll go back and look for part 1. I've done that with blog posts before, but I've never seen that in an email campaign. So, and you get very good results from that.
We do. We get good click through, and we don't make an ask every single time. So the first one, might be go like us on Facebook if you want to, learn more stories or hear more stories. Yep. The second one might be, check us out on our website so you can, learn more about Morning Light. And then the third one, we make our ask. So, it's an audience doesn't want to just feel like you're, hitting them up for money all the time, but you want to give them a call to action, and come deeper with us, learn more about us. If you're interested in volunteering, you can kind of determine what your call to actions are based on your goals. But I think that really, like you said, if it's worth their while, if it's good content, they're not going to get upset, about seeing something about a mission that they subscribe to, that they care about. Right. But no, they probably don't want 3 emails in a row. Just, hey, donate, hey, donate, hey, donate, Have you donated yet?
Like Giving Tuesday.
Right. Like Giving Tuesday.
Right. Or not all of the Giving Tuesday campaigns that I've seen, but like a lot of them.
Sure. Right. Yeah. You want to give people either, a good takeaway, something that makes them feel good, give them some quality information of some, maybe something educational, maybe something inspiring. That's what's going to keep people opening your emails.
Absolutely. 100%. Or following you in social media,
sure,
watching your videos, anything. There has to be that incentive for them. And I know that a lot of nonprofits find this challenging because we don't have coupons or offers or things like that. But we do have, meaningful stories and inspiration and making people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
Right.
And having them feel like they're leading a meaningful life by being involved with us. So I love that. All right. Well, as we wrap up, I want people to know more about where they can get in touch with Morning Light, but I would love for you to share more about your business and your storytelling coaching. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be interested in learning more about that.
Sure. Yeah. I really, I enjoy consulting with other nonprofits and, helping them kind of package their mission and their message. And, it really, like I said, it kind of came organically in terms of my work at Morning Light. I just saw what a difference storytelling made in our bottom lines and just the validation of our donors and also those that we serve. So I'm really passionate about it. I think there's a lot of good information to share. And I feel like when nonprofits get good at storytelling, their momentum can really take off. When nonprofits get good at storytelling, I think it's surprising how much the connection can increase and really, dollars raised, of course. So you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. That's where I connect probably the most.
Okay. We'll put that
LinkedIn.
link in the show notes.
But if you're interested in learning more about Morning Light, our website's morninglightinc.org. You can see what we're doing there. And I hope to connect with you.
What's on the horizon? What's coming up? When is the next storytelling campaign?
Yeah. So our next storytelling campaign will be at the end of the year. We usually do it, around the holidays towards the end of the year. But we do a Christmas in July at our home every year. And so it's almost July right now. We're recording this. So that's coming up. And that's such a good time. And we get a lot of good stories from that because, for hospice individuals, it's 6 months or less. So chances are quite good they won't actually make it to Christmas or the holiday season. So we decorate the home and we pass out gifts and carols and all that stuff. And so that's one of my favorite times of year for our organization. And I know our donors really like seeing that as well.
That's really amazing. Well, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for taking the time. As a consultant, business owner, mom of 2 kids, and executive director, I'm surprised that you have any time at all, but thank you so much. Thanks, Madison.
Thank you for having me.
Well, hey there. I wanted to say thank you for tuning into my show and for listening all the way to the end. If you really enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, and you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. I would love if you left me a rating or a review because this tells other people that my podcast is worth listening to. And then me and my guests can reach even more earbuds and create even more impact. So that's pretty much it. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode. But until then, you can find me on Instagram at JuliaCampbell77. Keep changing the world, you nonprofit unicorn.